When U.S. President Barack Obama visited the Standing Rock Native American Reservation in North Dakota this year, he praised Sioux tribal leaders' efforts to revitalize their native language, Lakota. The language has been nearly lost among recent generations.
But as VOA's Pande tells me, Lakota is being rediscovered through a program that brings the language to the youngest people on the reservation at a college that is also helping Native Americans attain a higher education, which is a rarity for tribe members.
One evening a week, young and old gather in Michael Moore's classroom in Fort Yates, North Dakota, to learn Lakota, the language of their Sioux tribal ancestors.
First of all, the need and the interest in learning the language started with these powwows. People go to the powwows, they go to the ceremonies, but they don't speak the language. So there's kind of a disconnect because you're honoring your tradition and your culture, but there's one huge part missing.
Many of the students here at Sitting Bull College are learning a language that their great-grandparents spoke fluently at home. But that changed in the early 1900s when thousands of Native American children were sent to boarding schools. There they were told to assimilate, learn English, and forced to forget all aspects of their native culture, including their language.
And then I talked to the other instructor, who is Sioux, who grew up in a family where his grandparents spoke Lakota and spoke it fluently. And he says, around me, nobody speaks it. Everyone's embarrassed to speak it. And I'm afraid when my generation dies out, we're going to lose the language.
The government punished us not to speak our language. And I see that happen. It happened to me. When I was day one, I went to school, I couldn't speak English, so I got punished pretty bad.
So there's been this concerted effort to really revive it. And so the funniest thing is you have a generation who are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s, older, who might not know it at all or know it and don't want to speak it. And now their children who are in their 20s wanting to learn.
Black Moon now devotes his days to making sure the Lakota language does not die out with his generation. He says he's one of the few Sioux Indians who can speak fluently and is heartened to see the youngest generations make efforts to learn a language that their own parents were discouraged to speak.
And I talked to one mother. She's like in her 20s, I would say. She has a young daughter who's 2 or 3 and is in an immersion program. So she goes to an immersion program all day long. They speak Lakota.
As the elders start passing away, a lot of them, they are taking all their knowledge that they have, and it's up to us to learn it so that we can carry it on.
And she said, my father, who I've never heard him speak Lakota before, all of a sudden one day, my daughter was speaking to him and he answered. Wow. And I had no idea that he had known the language, but he had never spoken.
Right, you mentioned the issue of education and the schools. There's a push now as well to improve education.
Right. So this tribal college, these tribal colleges are unique. This one in particular is on the reservation.
Some 300 students, including student body president Dakota Kidder, are completing their higher education at this federally funded school in hopes of defying statistics that show only about 10% of Native Americans have a college degree, roughly half the national average.
And when I talked to the president, she talked about the fact that, the youth who often don't have the support system, meaning their parents didn't go to college, their grandparents, they're the first. So when they do even go and apply to places outside the reservation, sometimes they get there and they're lost.
A huge majority are first-generation students, college students who don't have a lot of experience. They don't have parents who can tell them or talk about, college.
When you're on a reservation, it's a very different lifestyle, very different community, and everybody knows each other, and it's different. A lot of the young people, they might be single parents or, have families or children themselves, and so it's not sustainable. So we found a lot of people were coming back without a degree.
And in meeting some of these people on the reservation who are affected by all of this, what's your takeaway? What did you leave feeling and thinking, and what maybe struck you that might have been different from what you were expecting to find?
I didn't realize how isolated it is. I mean, once you're there, there's not a lot there. And every parent that I talked to said we need more things to do for our youth, more activities, because there's nothing here. I mean, you can imagine when most young people go to school, they're part of a community, they might have other outlets. But everyone I talked to was so really happy to see that the president had come. It meant there are opportunities out there, you know, whether you're 4 years old or 40 years old, that there's you know, something on the horizon for you. I think that's what they're looking for.
And thanks as always to VOA's Aru Pande. President Obama has made improving education in tribal communities a priority, an issue that was taken up when tribal leaders gathered in early December at the White House.
And as we round out the last days of 2014, 'tis the season to be jolly, as they say, my favorite season, of course. And in the U.S. state of Florida, there's a Pentecostal televangelist whose ministry is really jolly. You could say that is in his job description.